Good morning. Our prelude today is Rondo alla Turca by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Good morning. Welcome to worship at First Unitarian Church of Orlando. I'm Samuel Shaw, Transition Minister. These words of James Luther Adams call us together. I call that church free which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence, that sustaining and transforming power not made with human hands. It is open to insight and conscience from every source. It bursts through rigid tradition, giving rise to new and living language, to new and broader fellowship. It is a pilgrim church, a servant church, on an adventure of the Spirit. Welcome this morning to an adventure of the Spirit. For more information on our congregation, go to orlandouu.org or email WelcomeTeam at orlandouu.org. If you're new and have questions about our congregation, you're welcome in our Welcome Center after worship today at 11:30. Or at the same time, you're welcome to informal fellowship to gather with each other and chat for about 20 minutes. As most of you know, we are now in the middle of our Lighting the Way campaign to raise resource for another program year in ministry, lighting the way for our next generation of ministry as you prepare to call your new settled minister. Here's a progress report. This week we've received about $181,000 in total gifts. Our goal is $416,000, so we're almost halfway there. We saw many of you yesterday at our drive-up campaign on campus where you dropped off your pledge cards. Thank you for your generosity. If you haven't returned your pledge card, you may mail it in, call it in, email us the amount of your commitment for the next year, however is most convenient for you. And remember, we're asking at this point your commitment to give over the upcoming fiscal year beginning July 1st. Not actual giving quite yet, but your commitment to our free and self-sustaining congregation. And I might add that as the minister of this congregation, I also am with you in giving. It is a tradition among our ministerium that we give as well to our local self-sustaining congregation. Now, as you know, I'm your transition minister, and I'll be leaving in a couple of months, right before the settlement of your new settled minister. So I'm not giving in the upcoming campaign, but I have given in the 2 fiscal years that I have served you. My current pledge with you for this fiscal year is $3,300, which is about 5% of my net income and about 4% of my gross income. And I give because I believe in the transformative and sustaining power of this congregation in this city in these times. And I'll be giving to my next church, wherever that is, in their next fiscal year when I'm with them. For I believe in the sustaining and transforming power of our faith in these days, lighting the way in a world that is too often dark and narrow and scary. So I please ask you to consider what will be your transforming and sustaining gift for the upcoming year. Now, I know some of you have been hit hard financially with COVID, and we completely understand that. We've received a few emails about that, and we know that everyone is giving what they can. Those who have not been hit so hard, please give even more transformatively if you can. And for those of you who are giving, maybe new to giving, really search your conscience about this. Giving is a spiritual practice, and this congregation is in a really good spot on the cusp of growth in its next generation. I'm happy to chat with you about that, or anybody on our generosity team is as well. Thank you all for your very generous gifts, for this is a giving and sustaining congregation. To give, please go to orlandouu.org. Just click the donate button in the upper right-hand corner, or send us a text or send a check. And of course, as always, we remember our Share the Plate offering. Every month we choose a community partner that provides important services to our community. This month it's Healthcare Center for the Homeless. You can give to Share the Plate in the same manner as you give to the church. Just hit the donate button on the website and follow the directions. There's a lot going on here. We welcome you to this transformative time in worship. Now let's gather our hearts as we worship.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Good morning, and welcome to worship at First Unitarian Church of Orlando. My name is Kathy, and I'm a member of the Leadership Development Team. This year, the Leadership Development Team has sponsored a monthly discussion of the book Serving with Grace, written by Eric Walker Wickstrom. Today's service is a collaboration with the worship team, the Leadership Development Team, and some of the participants in that book group. The idea that lay leadership can be seen as one aspect of a fully rounded spiritual life was one that many of us had not really considered before. This book and the discussions that followed each chapter helped illustrate the ways that lay leadership can be its own spiritual practice, stretching us to learn more about ourselves and others. Here are a few lines from early in the book, a quote from the Reverend Gary Kowalski. People who come to Unitarian Universalism seeking spiritual goods are likely to be disappointed so long as they have the outlook of consumers in search of material goods. If their connection to our liberal faith is to grow into something more rewarding, they have to give up the consumer mindset and begin to think of themselves instead as shareholders, investors, co-owners in what happens in the church. We are reminded that lay work is a natural complement to worship, the opportunity to act upon and test your Unitarian Universalist values. You'll be hearing the reflections and experiences of a group of 1U leaders. We hope we will give you something to ponder as we invite you to become a more active co-owner of what happens in this congregation. So often, that can start just by saying yes.
Hi, I'm Janet Newman. Unitarian Universalists have a tradition of lighting a chalice before each service. Will you say the familiar words with me? In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share.
Sophia Valdez, Future Prez, by Andrea Beatty, illustrated by David Roberts. Sophia was a baby who got things done, helping her family before she turned 1. She and Abuelo went out every week to help elderly friends around Blue River Creek who couldn't get out and about on their own and with no place together were stuck home alone. Raking the leaves, taking pets for a walk, or just dropping by for a treat and a talk. Sophia Valdez did as much as she could for her family and friends and her whole neighborhood. A dreamer, a doer, a real-life go-getter. Most people like good, but Sophia liked better. Each morning, Abuelo walked Sophie to class. They walked home again along Blue River Pass, making plans, munching cookies, Abuelo and girl, except for that Tuesday when the pup saw the squirrel. With a howl, pup took off, racing all through the town, over, under, beneath, and around. Sophia scrambled to try to keep up with the hollering man and the bellowing pup. Up the squirrel ran to a top of a hill made of leftover junk for the local landfill. They reached the tip-top of that mountain of trash, which jiggled and broke with an ear-splitting crash. Down they all tumbled and hit with a thud on a moldy old pumpkin surrounded by mud. Ouch, cried Abuelo. He struggled to stand. A dangerous mess, he said, grasping her hand. The next day, Sophia walked to school solo, but it wasn't the same without her abuelo. This is not right, declared young Sophia, who glared at Mount Trashmore and got an idea. The very next morning, at dawn, she planted a sign at the front of the lawn. She stood back and smiled, and Pup gave a bark. Get rid of Mount Trashmore. Let's build a new park. Each of her neighbors had something to say about benches and fountains and places to play, meeting spots, gardens, a basket for bees, a rubber duck pond, and a kiosk for cheese. She drew every thought on her map of the park, which was perfectly perfect by 1/4 till dark. She drifted to sleep in her soft, cozy bed. Then, bam, she woke up with a thought smacked her head. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized each one of her neighbors had said, "Let me know when it's done." They all thought Sophia could build it alone. But how could one girl do so much on her own? The weight of that thought made her tender heart ache as night thunder growled and she lay wide awake. Then dawn brought a storm and the gloomy sky wept and the heartsick Sophia finally slept. Abuelo baked cookies when Sophie got up. He gave her a bagful and sneaked one to Pup. He blinked back a tear as he hugged his Sophia. For courage, he whispered, "Te amo, mi vida." Sophia's knee wobbled. She felt weak inside. She looked at his ankle and quite nearly cried. Though she didn't feel brave or courageous at all, Sophia Valdez went to face City Hall. The mayor's office sent her to room 401, the Blue River Creek Department of Fun, which sent her downstairs to room 302, the office of duck ponds and cool things to do, to the office of monkeys, the department of cheese, the division of fountains and meetings and bees, then down to the basement so musty and cramped where all the town's papers were sorted and stamped. And that's where the clerk said what no one else did. "You can't build a new park. You're only a kid." The words smacked Sophia deep down in her heart. Her plan was kiboshed before it could start. Said Sophia, "I think that law's wrong," but a second-grade voice didn't sound very strong. The clerk said, "Clearly, it cannot be done. Do you have any questions?" Sophia said one. "If you were me and I was you and he was your grandpa, what would you do?" Well, said the clerk. Then she said nothing at all. She thought, and then she sent out a call to every employee throughout City Hall. The entire government of Blue River Creek crammed into the office to hear Sophie speak, but her words jumbled up and her cheeks turned bright red as a dozen emotions rushed into her head. Her heart beat so loudly she thought it would crack. The crowd leaned in closer. Sophia leaned back. Then her arm brushed the edge of an old cookie sack. And that was the moment Sophia first knew that being brave means doing the thing you must do, even though your heart cracks with fear, though you're just in grade 2. She took a deep breath, looked the mayor in the eye, and though her knees wobbled, she held her head high. Sophia started talking. She spelled out her plan, and why it all mattered, and how it began. And once she got rolling, she had lots to say about meeting spots, monkeys, and places to play, and other ideas for things they could do to help the town elders and other folks too. She had thoughts on the library, thoughts on the zoo, and perhaps a way to combine the two, and... "All right," cried the mayor, "go start a petition. If the town wants a new park, we'll form a commission." And so young Sophia got right to work with some help from her family and Pup and the clerk. Then others joined in, not all but a few, like Miss Lila Greer and the kids in grade 2. There were hearings and surveys and taxes to figure, then bulldozers, cranes, and a blue bigger digger. They all built that park. That's how it got done, with the hard work of, by, and for everyone. But it began with the dream of one person, just one, who laced up her shoes and then led the way to help Blue River Creek get a new place to play. Now every evening till long after dark, the town comes together at Citizens Park. They all hold this truth to be self-evident, that Sophia Valdez could grow up to be president. Until then, Sophia, the real-life go-getter, helps Blue River Creek get better and better.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with each other. Thus do we covenant with each other.
And so we enter a time of mindfulness, of meditation and prayer. We'll begin with the hearing of the joys and concerns in our community and the world. This week, our hearts are broken with news of the shooting in Boulder, Colorado, and the tragic and unnecessary deaths of 10 people. This following, of course, the previous week's shooting and loss of life in Atlanta. That, of course, on top of mass shooting, on top of mass shooting, on top of mass shooting. In the words of the Reverend Keith Cron, the Director of Transitions in our National Association, he said, "Today and forever I grieve for loss of life. I grieve for the people who died in Boulder and Atlanta. I grieve for their families, friends, and co-workers. I grieve for those who were there and feel both lucky and guilty they survived while others died. We have witnessed yet another national tragedy. I grieve for all those who directly or indirectly are affected by the news." We grieve and we witness. Love is the doctrine of this congregation, and love in the wider community, of course, is called justice. So may it reign. Speaking of witness, this upcoming week, we'll finally be restoring our Black Lives Matter banner that had been vandalized so repeatedly. We finally kept it down for a while we put up new lighting in the yard, while we replaced our security camera, and while we found a protective dome for that camera. So all that has taken longer than expected, but we're ready now to restore the banner. Our Transition Justice Council is meeting shortly to film a blessing for the banner. And so the banner should be restored, hopefully by the time you see this on Sunday morning. We'll post the video of that blessing and restoration to our Facebook page and to other media from the church, so you'll get a chance to see it. And as always, we remember the unspoken concerns of our congregation and the world. And we know that the light of the sacred shines into the dark and broken places of our lives and all life. And so that we might be mindful of that connection of our lives and all life, again, let's take a deep and cleansing breath. Mindful of how the simple act of breathing models our inherent interdependence with each other and with all. Our meditation this morning is taken from the words of Rebecca Ann Parker. I'll follow with a prayer. When we go into the silence, you may use either Facebook comments or Zoom chat to name anyone in your life in each prayer, remembering or honoring in our communion of names. These words from Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discern them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Spirit of life, of love, that creative, sustaining, and transformative power in us and in the world. Thank you for the gift of life. We grieve for those who have lost it so violently. We stand with those who witness for life, for wholeness, for justice. We are also mindful of the sufferings in our community and the world. We pray for all those who are hurting in any manner of body, mind, or spirit. For these and for all, we pray for a greater sense of peace, fulfillment, relationship, abundance, sufficiency, health in all things. Now, with the private meditations of our hearts, we enter the silence in the communion of names. And so it is. Blessed be. Amen.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Schleier, long-term Unitarian and a long-term contributor to the First Unitarian Church of Orlando. I don't feel like I have to give to balance the budget. I give because this is my community. It provides a space, spiritual and physical, for me. 3 times a week, I visit the labyrinth for Tai Chi. I sometimes pick vegetables or flowers, and sometimes I just hang out here. I have used every room in this church, I bet, for either covenant or meditation, for meetings or to visit with my friends. I give to keep it beautiful, and it's a sanctuary ready to both celebrate weddings, babies, anniversaries, the gift of a life well lived. The church also is a place to gather in pain. I was here the Sunday after 9/11 and after the horror of Pulse. All I have mentioned also requires a professional staff to keep it running, directed. They are here to minister, to help lead, connect, and manage. Their presence and their compensation also means we can keep and reach out to other organizations that we support and coordinate with them to share the goals in the larger community. This includes Planned Parenthood and Second Harvest, the Literacy League, and so many more. So this is my community, our community. I do all I can, both in money and time, to further this mission. Please give all you can to keep it strong.
I am who I'm becoming. I am all I have done. I am what I am dreaming. I've only just begun. I am who I'm becoming. I am all I have done. I am what I am dreaming. I've only just begun. You are who you're becoming. You are all you have done. You are what you are dreaming. You've only just begun. You are who you're becoming. You are all you have done. You are what you are dreaming. You've only just begun. We are who we're becoming. We are all we have done. We are what we are dreaming. We've only just begun. We are who we're becoming. We are all we have done. We are what we are dreaming. We've only just begun.
Today, several adults in the Serving with Grace book group gathered together to reflect on leadership. They also reflect on how their church service might deepen their spiritual life and further their spiritual journey. Let's jump into the questions. What do you think of the word leader? Is there another word you would use?
Leader, as a term, I'm sometimes ambivalent because it feels like too much responsibility. And so sometimes I think about it and I'm energized by it, and other times it's a little fearful. And so in those times, I think about it as, no, you've just been asked to be on point for a task. I wouldn't call it necessarily leading as much as accepting the call to participate in a way that I could contribute.
People associate it with somebody that has some knowledge, some background, a little bit of authority, possibly. Though I would say within the church, most of our leaders are really something like a coordinator, a facilitator, an anchor, a team member.
So I would add to what Cindy said, the word mentor, because I think that's something that's important in the church, especially as we develop leaders.
How did your personal beliefs affect your decision to become a church leader?
I grew up in a very small community, and you realize in that size of a community that unless everybody steps up and participates, we can't succeed. We can't do all the things we want to do. You can't have a softball team with half the number of people unless people who are ambivalent say, yeah, I'll do that. And they step up and they play.
I think one reason I've always loved Unitarianism is because it's considered an active faith, not just reading, not just discussing, not just sitting in a pew. It translates into, yes, I believe in social justice, therefore I am going to work with this church on social justice things.
We've really grown into and are part of this community and church. We sought it out when we moved to Orlando. And I think for me, it's wanting it to be here for my kids as well as the other generations.
That at some point, I became an owner of First Unitarian Church. And as an owner, it was my responsibility to take time to do more than just worship. I needed to be willing to get into the work of the church because it gave me a chance to try my Unitarian Universalist values in a safe place.
What's been your favorite volunteer job at 1U, and how did you come to it? What kind of volunteer or leader are you?
I think about 2006, maybe 2000, or early 2007. I was facilitating the drop-in covenant group, and who shows up but John and Martha? And I'm going to take credit for inspiring them.
My favorite leadership role is being on the board of the Alliance. It just seemed natural for me. The Alliance is a church organization that runs a shop, makes money, and donates that money to local service organizations in the Central Florida area.
So I would say that I'm a very hands-on person, and the leadership role that I'm, I guess, most proud of is that with the long-term maintenance and enhancement team.
I like variety. So I loved working with OWL and being an OWL teacher, which is Our Whole Lives and sexual education for the children. And, because you get to know people.
What were some of the challenges or rewards you experienced leading a church?
Well, I want to start with the rewards, because I think the rewards are being able to share the pleasures that we would get, whether it was working with children in the Sunday school or whether it was working with the board of the church.
Working as a volunteer in an organization that wasn't my church was satisfying intellectually, but it didn't touch my heart in the same way that being a leader in my congregation does. I have a deeper relationship with the members of the congregation. I have a vested interest in the health of my congregation, and so I'm deeply concerned that we are all successful.
Compared to what I do at work or have done at work in my career, or compared to things like being a scout leader, this is a more sensitive role in this, and you're part of the community, right? And you need to balance that and listen to perspectives more so than when you are the boss. And so I think that sense of being part of community, not the boss of it, right, or making the decisions for it, sometimes takes more time, but it's increased sensitivity to other people's perspectives. That's the difference, I think, being within the church community.
I'd been a director and had supervised people, but I also had bosses that could say, you do it whether you like it or not. So, and in church, it's like you have to depend on volunteers to get things done. And if the volunteers are not interested or busy in other things, or it just isn't something that's inspirational, no matter what you think as a leader, you can't make volunteers do something. The good side, obviously, of the church is you are working with people that share your same values and you're working for a joint cause.
Sometimes it is a challenge, more today than even 10 years ago, because people are that much busier, to try to get them to commit either for a one-time event or to be part of a committee that lasts for a church year. It feels so good to accomplish a task when you've been able to rally their time and talents, even if it's for a 3-hour work morning and you've done 10 things and things look more spruced up.
We have a clear path to membership at 1U. If you were going to describe a path to leadership that a person could travel, how would it go? Or how did it go for you?
And it can work, but sometimes people dive in right away, or people say, I want to be a member tomorrow, and they've just visited the church for 2 times. I think you need to spend some time in that place and space and spiritually be there before you can really make a commitment and become an effective leader.
Curiosity about how do things work around here? Ask questions and, well, how do we get this nice food at coffee hour after the service? Well, people bring it. Well, do you need people to sign up? Well, yeah. Would you like to sign up? And then offering to do something small connected with it.
Opportunities for leadership will flow naturally from active participation in the life of the church. That's the way it was with me. I kind of jumped in with both feet on several things.
Having people know you and be in relationship with you is really key. And I found that to be true myself. I was invited to help with a photo directory when I was very new in the church. It was an easy job, but I said yes, and people had me on the list as a person who might be available to try something else.
I'm not a leader, but I have noticed that leaders need helpers. So I would advise a new member to join an activity or a group that interests them, to show up, listen, and contribute toward the group's goals. Learning and growing in your faith as you learn and grow in your spiritual self and as a group member.
What do you wish someone had told you before you started leading? Did you have any fears?
Worrying about people agreeing to help you with a project is always an anxiety, but I've found that over time, people are more than willing to accept invitations if the jobs are well described and they're approached in a friendly manner. I have always appreciated working in a structure that shows me support. So I've been supported either by a board, a council, a little bigger committee, a team, staff, and that was very reassuring.
I was asked to be on the board, and then they said, oh, and your position on the board is going to be also vice president of, I want to say maintenance or grounds. I'm like, oh, okay. I should have asked more questions and not maybe felt like I had to do it all myself. So somebody came up and said, did you know that there was some mold or mildew on some cement? So I said, no. So I went home and got some scrub of stuff and went out and started scrubbing it. And, I was still working. I thought, what am I doing? I could scrub this whole sidewalk.
So one of the things that I'm going to do is promote a book that we've had to read, Serving with Grace. And I think all leaders should read that in their very early phases of leadership, because one of the most important things I've learned in this book is to say no. There are times if you continue to say yes, you'll probably get a bit overloaded or overwhelmed, and you probably won't do anything that you're responsible for as well as you would if you just had one fewer things to do. And as far as the fear factor, I'm more afraid of talking here or in the pulpit than I am leading. So,
As a leader, how do you handle disagreements or conflict resolution on your church team?
I think the difference sometimes between being in a church committee and being in a business group is significant here, because at certain level within our church, we do have covenants and right relations.
Particularly in a church community where we hold as a fundamental tenet, respect for each other is to listen and probe and talk about things. If somebody has a passionate response, chances are there's a nugget in there of true wisdom that if you can talk about it a while, you'll find that wisdom, and it really can help the final decisions.
I would put all ideas on the table, allow their makers to explain their idea, and attempt to facilitate consensus in the group.
and everybody should have input into whether what are the pros and cons of those ideas and what are the strengths and weaknesses. And I think through that process, bad ideas generally tend to fall out. And if it's not that huge of an idea, then sometimes letting it work itself through, it may prove successful and we'll all be like, wow, that was great. Or it may prove itself to not work out well, but at least we've given that person a chance to try to put something forward and see if it does work.
I will say that there have been times where I've had to have a private conversation with someone after an event to point out how they've broken covenant with our group. They've stepped out of the bounds of what's appropriate in our congregation, done with love and respect. It's still hard, but it was a positive conversation that was important to be honest and to reflect back when someone made an error.
How does being a leader help deepen or challenge your spiritual life?
Service is my spiritual practice in some ways. That, I'm in service to the church, to the faith, to liberal traditions of faith. So feeling like I can do that, and spend time and my energy doing that, I think deepens it.
Lifelong learning, discovering more about ourselves and others is critical. I've built deeper and deeper relationships the more I've been active in the church and in leadership. I've increased my patience and my understanding that relationship over efficiency is critical.
Being able to go to regional meetings and the national meetings and learning what was happening in the whole denomination was very important, and it really did strengthen my commitment to the denomination as a whole.
And being able to contribute to a community, our community. I was helpful today. I helped move us forward. I helped solve a problem. And it's that helps my spirit.
What advice would you give a new or aspiring leader today?
I wish that someone had told me straight out that I did not need to be perfect and that whatever I was bringing to the table as a leader would be just fine.
It's important to know what the boundaries are of the project or responsibilities that you've been given. What's the scope of work if you've asked to do a specific project, like write a report or do a study? It's very easy for us to go off on tangents or for people to ask us to do more than we originally bargained for.
Talk less and listen more. It was a fault of mine to just kind of barge ahead and not necessarily listen to what others were saying or thinking. So it really helped me as I grew as a leader to learn this. I would urge an aspiring leader to know themselves, their strengths and weaknesses. And
if I think the effort is worthy and the people are needed, I will volunteer as a helper. I am good at one task rather than many tasks. I have found that the experience of working with a group at church is joyful. Some people move into leadership roles, others don't. Everybody's involvement is important.
Take note of how the leadership changes even week to week in some particular jobs. And also, if you do take on responsibility, be organized with it and be willing to share the leadership with others.
Younger people that feel like they don't have the time or energy, take just a little piece of it, and join a Zoom meeting or come to the garden, just so you can see that you're not just putting energy into the church, you're getting something out of it too.
Church is a loving and nurturing environment. Working with a group, you will learn about yourself and grow strong.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts as we go forth into the world. So may it be.
Having a wide variety of personalities, interests, and experiences represented in church leadership is a true blessing. The new ideas, perspectives, and initiatives that new volunteers and new leaders can bring help illuminate the congregation and make it a vibrant and thriving community. From serving with grace, anything can be a Bible, a Quran. Anywhere can be a temple, a zendo. If you can find the sacred at a church finance committee meeting around budget time, you can do it anywhere. Seeing church leadership as a spiritual practice gives us one more tool to open our eyes, our minds, and our hearts to the depths of life so that we might more deeply live and love and be in tune with life's depths, and in this way find our lives and our living transformed. So when you're ready, I invite you to be bold, to step up when invited, and invite yourselves to be engaged in the life of the congregation, to be an owner, not a visitor, and let your light sparkle. Blessed be.
Spirit